All right, so in several of the videos I've already done on Instagram, I've mentioned that Ervil LeBaron was on the front page of the National Enquirer as the number one suspect in the assassination of JFK. And rightfully so, some of you have questioned why I would use a trashy supermarket tabloid as a source for my podcast. And you're not wrong that it became that, but here's the thing. The reason I want to use it, the reason it actually matters in this story, has everything to do with who built it, who funded it, and who in that family tree is showing up in files that concern all of us right now, specifically the Epstein files. Now, the National Enquirer that most of us know, the one screaming at you from the checkout headline, didn't start out that way. It passed through several different hands before it became what it is today, and each set of hands left its mark on it. But to understand the beginning, you have to go back to 1926 when the paper didn't even carry that name yet. It was called the New York Evening Enquirer, and it was founded by a man named William Griffin, using money loaned to him by one of the most powerful media moguls in American history. That man was William Randolph Hearst, and the corporation he built is still one of the most influential media empires on the planet right now. They own the Houston Chronicle, the San Francisco Chronicle, and as of 2025, they've been on a buying spree for several major metropolitan newspapers in the state of Texas. They own Cosmopolitan, Esquire, Harper's Bazaar, Car and Driver, Men's Health. They own close to 3 dozen television stations across the country. They have a 20% stake in ESPN. They own half of A&E networks, things like History Channel and Lifetime. They co launched O Magazine with Oprah Winfrey back in 2000, and that partnership ran for 20 years. The Hearst Corporation pulled in over $13 billion in revenue in 2024 alone. And the whole thing, every piece of it, is still controlled by a private family trust set up by one man. According to Forbes, the Hearst family collectively has a net worth of around $22.4 billion, ranking them as America's 14th richest family. William Hearst began this media company in the 1920s and 30s. His life inspired the film Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is a 1941 film following the rise and fall of a fictional media tycoon named Charles Foster Kane, who builds a massive newspaper empire and uses it to manipulate public opinion and push his own agenda. It is, for some reason, considered one of the greatest films ever made. Hearst had 28 newspapers, wire services, radio stations, film productions. He pioneered what we now call yellow journalism, which is a polite way of saying that he figured out that sensationalism sells, that you can take a kernel of truth, wrap it in emotion and drama, and people will buy it. And in 1926, he used his money to bankroll a new paper, the New York Evening Enquirer. He didn't put his name on it. He loaned the money to William Griffin, who was one of his former advertising men, to found it. But Hearst was using it as a test kitchen. Ideas that worked there, he'd roll out across his main papers. The stuff that flopped, he'd let stay with the Enquirer. It limped along for decades. By the time Griffin died, it was down to 17,000 readers a week, and it was sold in 1952 for $75,000. And now, fast forward to today, William Randolph Hearst's grandson, Austin Hearst, appears in the Epstein files multiple times. Documented meetings with Jeffrey Epstein after 2008, after the initial conviction, lunch meetings, plans for a trip to Harvard together, and Austin Hearst currently sits on the Alumni Board of Trustees for Save the Children. Save the Children is a nonprofit organization with the stated mission of improving the lives of children around the world through access to education, healthcare, and protection from harm. They operate in over 100 countries and are one of the most well-known and well-funded children's advocacy organizations in existence, raising hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Hollywood actress Jennifer Garner is also on the board of trustees. She joined the board in 2014 and is a member of the Program Impact and Marketing Committee. As of right now, this information can be found on the Save the Children website. That information could be its own episode, but for now, let's continue with the story of the National Enquirer after it left the hands of William Hearst and into the story of the man who bought it. His name was Generoso Pope Jr., a young man in his 20s, MIT educated. His father had been a powerful Italian American newspaper publisher in New York, a kingmaker in city politics, and a man with well documented ties to organized crime, specifically to Frank Costello. For those of you who don't know that name, Frank Costello was the boss of the Luciano, I think it's pronounced, the Luciano crime family, one of the most politically connected mob figures in American history. They literally called him the prime minister of the underworld. And when Generoso Pope Jr. was born, his father asked Frank Costello to be the boy's godfather. After his father died in 1950, Gene Pope lost a family power struggle and got pushed out. So he made an interesting move. He went to Washington and joined the CIA. He was assigned to the Psychological Warfare Unit, the people who dealt in propaganda, influence operations, controlling narratives, people who know how to use information as a weapon. 1 year later, he left, came back to New York, and bought a struggling little tabloid. And where did the money come from for it? It came from Frank Costello, his godfather. $10,000 from the mob boss, reportedly matched by another $10,000 from a young lawyer named, I think his name is pronounced Roy Cohn. The same Roy Cohn, who would later become Donald Trump's business mentor, he helped fund the purchase of what would become the National Enquirer. Roy Cohn and Gene Pope Jr. didn't just happen to do business together. These guys grew up next door to each other. They were neighbors. They went to school together as kids. And Gene's father, Generoso Pope Sr., was actually one of the people who helped shape Roy Cohn's entire approach to politics. Cohn said it himself. He said Pope Sr. had more to do with his early political career than anybody else. Now, let me put into perspective who Generoso Pope Sr. actually was, because I don't think people fully appreciate this. This man came to America at 15 years old with basically nothing in his pocket, and by the time he was done, he was sitting across from presidents, not as a guest, but as a power player. There are photos of him having tea with Franklin Roosevelt at the White House in 1934. There are photos of his sons, including a young Gene Pope Jr., standing next to Harry Truman. And the reason those meetings were happening is because Pope Sr. was the man who delivered the Italian-American voting bloc to Roosevelt. Historians credit him with being a deciding factor in multiple presidential elections, but he was playing both sides. In 1948, he was backing Truman publicly while quietly supporting Dewey at the same time, just to make sure he had access no matter who ended up in the White House. So when you understand all of that, when you understand that this is the family, the circle, the network behind the paper that put Orville LeBaron on its front page, it stops looking like a tabloid story and starts looking like something a lot more deliberate. Now, here's something I want you to really sit with for a second. There is a concept called manufactured consent. The people in power don't actually need you to be asleep. They just need you to be looking in the wrong direction. They give you just enough information to feel like you're paying attention, to feel like you're in the know, but it's carefully curated to keep you engaged without ever actually waking you up. And the tabloid is absolutely perfect for that. That's what I want you to be thinking about as we go through this story together, because nothing we've talked about today happened by accident. So when we're talking about the hands this paper has passed through, we're talking about a Hearst media experiment funded by one of the most powerful press barons, taken over by a CIA psychological warfare operative whose purchase was bankrolled by one of the most powerful mob bosses in the country. I'm not here to tell you what to make of all of that, but I'm here to make sure that you have the full picture. Because when we talk about the National Enquirer, we're not just talking about celebrity gossip. We're talking about a paper that was born in the overlap of yellow journalism, organized crime, and government intelligence operations, and whose founding family has threads that run straight into some of the most talked about stories of our time. So that's where I want to leave it for today, and honestly, I want to hear from you before I decide where we go next, because there's a lot of directions we could take this. We could go deeper on the National Enquirer, the CIA connections, what Pope Jr. actually did with that paper and why it matters. We could get into more of Orville LeBaron's story and who he actually was. We could talk about his personal connections to JFK, the JFK assassination, and what that evidence actually looks like. Or if you want to hear more of my personal story and how I even got into all of this, I can do that too. So talk about it in the comments. Tell me what you want to hear next. I do read them, and I want these episodes to be built around what you actually want to know, so your feedback genuinely shapes where this goes. If there's something specific you're curious about, something you want me to dig into, say so. I want you guys to be part of this. Also, if you guys hear me say something false, please correct me. I do a lot of research and I try to fact check with multiple sources, but I am not perfect and this is hard. So just let me know and I can do more research and correct myself if necessary. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.